suspect could face, plus the promising new type of mind-body therapy that could help reverse complications of cancer treatment. This is the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thank you for joining us. Right now, the fate of the Maryland man deported to El Salvador remains uncertain. This case went before a federal judge again just hours ago after the judge requested to hear an update on Kilmar Abrego Garcia's whereabouts and how the U.S. will get him home. Lawyers for the Trump administration said the government is prepared to facilitate his transfer back to the U.S., but that he'd still be deported back to El Salvador or another country because he's in MS-13. And El Salvador's president says he won't release him from prison. Abrego Garcia's attorneys say the government should at least have to request his release in order to comply with the Supreme Court's order to return him. His wife spoke today before the hearing.
I will not stop fighting until I see my husband alive. Kilmar, if you can hear me, stay strong. God hasn't forgotten about you.
Today, the judge said she will mandate the Trump administration to provide detailed information about the government's efforts to bring Abrego Garcia back. New details: the man charged in the arson attack at Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro's home may also be facing hate crime charges. That's according to the Dauphin County District Attorney, who said there's evidence in a search warrant that Cody Balmer was going after the Shapiros because they're Jewish. The family was celebrating Passover this weekend before being evacuated because of the fire.
Passover is one of our most important and one of our most joyful holidays on the Hebrew calendar. My family had just finished our first night of Passover Seder the night before, so we could certainly identify with the jarring transition from celebration to crisis.
Balmer is already facing multiple charges. He was arraigned on Monday and denied bail. Continuing coverage, the Trump administration now pulling more than $2 billion worth of federal funding from Harvard. This move came just hours after the university sent a letter refusing to comply with a list of government requests said to be aimed at addressing anti-Semitism on campus. National correspondent Kelly Gaskins joins us with more from Washington.
The tug of war between America's elite universities and the White House escalating.
All the president is asking, don't break federal law, and then you can have your federal funding. And we certainly should not be funding a place where such grave anti-Semitism exists.
Among the demands the White House asked for and Harvard refused to agree to were leadership reforms to increase the power of senior leadership and tenured professors and reduce the power of students and untenured faculty. Also, merit-based hiring reforms to do away with hiring preferences based on race, color, gender, or religion, and international admissions reform to prevent admissions of students hostile to American values with ties to terrorism organizations, and finally, a discontinuation of DEI programs. President Trump has long taken issue with elite universities he argues push a far-left worldview and silence conservatives. In a Truth Social post Tuesday, Trump suggested Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it continues to push political ideologies.
In a dozen different ways, these universities are subsidized by taxpayers.
Although Harvard has a $53 billion endowment, much of that bucket is strapped with red tape and inaccessible for routine operating costs. Federal dollars amount for 2/3 of Harvard's annual research budget and 11% of the annual operating costs.
They actually need every penny they can get from the federal government, and if they fall short by several $100 million or even a couple $1 billion, then they're going to have a very hard time making ends meet.
Because of the heavy research conducted at Harvard, it's actually more dependent on federal dollars than other Ivy League schools like Princeton. Harvard's leadership is already exploring ways to make up for a massive loss of federal funds. Experts say, though, it will take a total restructuring of operations. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins.
Officials in Arkansas and Indiana are asking the Trump administration to pull soda and candy from food stamp programs. That's according to the Wall Street Journal. Arkansas's governor said the goal is to improve the health of hundreds of thousands of SNAP benefit recipients. The USDA said it'll fast track the state's requests. Critics of these kinds of restrictions say they won't help people get out of poverty. Several other states are taking similar steps. And Indiana Governor Mike Braun also announced other SNAP changes today at an event with HHS Secretary RFK Jr. and Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services head Dr. Mehmet Oz. Braun signed executive orders changing employment requirements for SNAP recipients, putting back income and asset verification requirements, and looking into improper payments. Right now, former President Biden is making a return to the national stage to share his concerns over perceived Social Security threats. He is set to speak any minute now at the National Conference of Advocates, Counselors, and Representatives for the Disabled in Chicago, Illinois. This address focusing on a critical issue affecting tens of millions, which could be a defining factor for the 2026 midterm elections. This as President Trump is signing a memo today aimed at preventing people from claiming Social Security benefits they're not entitled to, according to the White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She insists President Trump is not touching Social Security otherwise. Trump has slashed thousands of Social Security Administration employees, but the White House maintains he's just focused on fraud and waste.
President Trump is absolutely certain about protecting Social Security benefits for law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens and seniors who have paid into this program. He will always protect that program. He campaigned on it, he protected it in his first term, and he's back again to continue protecting it.
The White House is reportedly on the verge of formally asking Congress to codify steep budget cuts, including defunding public television and radio. National correspondent Matt Gelka has a closer look in tonight's Waste Watch report from Washington.
PBS and NPR could see their budgets slashed. The White House called the public broadcasters a grift and trash, with a laundry list of content it didn't agree with.
Good morning.
The release comes weeks after a hearing debating the public broadcasters' continued congressional funding, and comes as the New York Post reports the Trump administration is on the verge of formally asking Congress to rescind $1.1 billion in funding to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. The Post cited a memo from White House Budget Director Russ Vought.
Every Republican president since LBJ has complained bitterly about their bias, has tried to defund them, has begged them to reform themselves. They haven't done so. They're brazen.
The memo reportedly cites anti-conservative bias as a reason for wanting to rescind the funds. A Pew Research poll from March found only 24% of the public wanted Congress to remove federal funding for NPR and PBS.
The principal investigative committee in the House of Representatives has now stooped to the lowest levels of partisanship and political theater to hold a hearing to go after the likes of Elmo and Cookie Monster and Arthur the Aardvark, all for the unforgivable sin of teaching the alphabet to low-income families' children.
Vought's memo also looks to codify some of the Department of Government Efficiency's foreign aid cuts. Citing waste that would continue without rescission, the White House could be asking Congress to eliminate $8 billion in funding for the State Department and the now dismantled USAID. NPR gets about 1% of its total funding from the federal government, and PBS gets about 15%. But local stations could be hit harder, with some of them potentially being forced to shut down.
Interesting how that could trickle down, Matt. Any idea how likely this is to become a reality?
Well, just because the White House makes the request doesn't mean it's set in stone. A $15 billion request, similar request from the president's first term, was ultimately rejected by the Senate, and it's likely this will all factor in heavily to budget negotiations in the near future.
Live from Washington, D.C., Matt Gelka, thank you. The family of an American pastor kidnapped at gunpoint in South Africa is asking for prayers. 34-year-old Joshua Sullivan from Tennessee lives there as a missionary setting up churches. Last week, 4 armed and masked men raided his congregation and forced him outside to his truck. The vehicle was found nearby, later abandoned, according to South African police. A retired FBI agent said there's hope for Sullivan's return.
When the incident happened, none of the other family members were hurt. So hopefully that's indicative of an open line and an open dialogue that the folks who are involved with this will want to do, and so everybody can come home safely.
The South African police anti-gang unit is now leading the investigation. Harvey Weinstein's rape and assault retrial is now underway. New York's Court of Appeals overturned the former movie mogul's conviction and ordered a new trial. The court found his original 2020 trial had improper rulings and prejudicial testimony. Weinstein has pleaded not guilty and denies the accusations. The judge expects opening statements next week. Tariff threats, what the White House press secretary is now saying about possible trade deals. That's coming up. Plus, surprising findings of a new study on technology use in older adults and the risk of dementia. We're back in 90 seconds. The trade war between China and the U.S. is escalating, but the White House says if China wants new terms, it's on them to pick up the phone.
The ball is in China's court. China needs to make a deal with us. We don't have to make a deal with them.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt there said that was in a statement President Trump had just given her, adding there's, quote, no difference between China and any other country except they are much larger. Trump has imposed a 145% tariff on all Chinese imports while pausing levies on all other countries. He argues China's response that it will fight to the end is an escalation. China has significantly ramped up its own tariffs on U.S. imports, too. And this all comes as Trump is actively reviewing at least 15 possible trade deals. That's according to Leavitt. Vice President J.D. Vance predicted in a new interview with the British publication Unheard that a trade deal with the U.K. could come soon, but small businesses are still dealing with uncertainty regarding tariffs.
And that's been one of the hardest things, is the daily volatility, the reasoning as to why we're in this trade war to begin with. Is it fentanyl? Is it to bring back U.S. manufacturing? Is it just purely negotiations and we should be holding on?
You have just a few hours left to file your federal income taxes if you haven't already. However, people in 7 disaster-stricken states have been given extensions. The direct file program is now available for around 30 million taxpayers. Some good news, the average tax refund is higher than last year's. Axios reports it's increased 3.5% to just over $3,100. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg weighed possibly spinning off Instagram back in 2018 over fears of a rising antitrust movement. That's according to an email presented during today's Meta's antitrust trial. Meta brought the video sharing app in 2012, I should say. They bought that. Instagram had just 13 employees at the time. Former Federal Trade Commission Chair Lina Khan here on what Facebook is accused of.
And a basic tenet of antitrust law is that you need to be able to get ahead in the market by competing fairly. But what we saw from Facebook was that if it couldn't outcompete its rivals, it decided to either buy them out or bury them.
Meta disputes FTC allegations that it's a monopoly, pointing to rivals like TikTok and Apple's iMessage as examples of strong competition among social media. The purchase of WhatsApp for $19 billion in 2014 is also part of the trial. New tonight, the Trump administration now weighing in on whether it would send American citizens convicted of crimes to prisons in Central America. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports.
President Trump is simultaneously boasting a drop in border crossings and expanding the military's presence at the southern border, saying the complexity of the situation calls for it. And as El Salvador is taking in hundreds of Venezuelan prisoners for the U.S., the president's now looking at the possibility of taking American citizens who are criminals and sending them to prisons in Central America.
He would only consider this, if legal, for Americans who are the most violent, egregious, repeat offenders of crime who nobody in this room wants living in their communities.
Meanwhile, the White House is making it clear it has no problem with leaving Kilmar Abrego Garcia of Maryland, whose deportation was called an administrative error by the Justice Department, in that infamous gang prison in El Salvador known for its high death rate and human rights abuses. Maryland Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen says if he's not released this week, he'll go to El Salvador. Other Democratic lawmakers say they'll join him.
We should care about this case because of due process. Every American citizen is due their due process, and people who are in the United States under legal protective status, like Abrego Garcia was, are entitled to due process.
Also on Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says a new presidential memorandum will go after fraud at the Social Security Administration.
The memorandum will direct the administration to ensure ineligible aliens are not receiving funds from the Social Security Act programs. These taxpayer-funded benefits should be only for eligible taxpayers.
It's already against the law for people who are ineligible to receive funds, and many questions have been raised about Elon Musk and Doge's claims of fraud at the Social Security Administration. At the White House, I'm Atra El-Nashar.
In a show of force against North Korea today, the U.S. deployed long-range B-1B bombers in a drill with South Korea. This display comes days after the sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un vowed to resist a U.S.-led push to eliminate their nuclear program. The bombers could also trigger an angrier response as they flew on the day of the 113th birthday of Kim Jong-un's late grandfather. South Korea says that U.S. participation in the drill is meant to strengthen mission capability. Today's the final day Forever 21 is taking gift cards as it prepares to close all its U.S. stores. The popular clothing brand plans to shutter its locations by next month unless a buyer emerges. Some in-person stores are set to remain open, and online orders are still being filled. All orders are also now final sale. Now to a health alert. Technology could help lower the risk of dementia. A new review of previous studies investigated the digital dementia hypothesis, which argues lifetime use may increase reliance on technology and weaken cognitive abilities over time. Instead, the analysis found technology use was associated with a 42% lower risk of cognitive impairment. However, one of the study's authors says their findings are not a blanket endorsement for mindless scrolling. Researchers say a fun kind of mind-body exercise may actually help in cancer recovery. Medical reporter Liz Bonus explains how.
Hey there, everybody. This new study shows that a common side effect of treatment in cancer survivors can improve with dance therapy. It's chemo-related neuropathy, and it causes numbness, commonly in the feet of those treated for breast cancer. Amy Kane has it. It's why she participated in the adapted Argentine tango dance therapy study at the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center. The center provided this video. Right away, she found
it kind of takes your mind off of the fact that your toes may be numb.
Dr. Leesworthen Chowdhury was the lead researcher in this trial. She says when people have this type of neuropathy,
because they can't feel the bottoms of their feet very well, they fall more easily.
So her team decided to see if this type of partnered tango would help reduce those falls and maybe the neuropathy too.
There's something unique about dance, the way that we use our minds and our bodies together, that really lends itself to sort of medical intervention.
They measured the electrical brain activity through these caps in participants before and after this 8-week dance class. In the end, they discovered
it was easier for them to do complex tasks that required them to think and move at the same time.
The conclusion? Just 20 minutes of dance with the beat of this kind of music was enough to improve the brain-body connection in those such as Amy Kane for better coordination and fewer falls. So if you're not into dance, I did ask, you can do other activities to improve neuropathy, but the mind, body, and music combination does seem to especially help reduce fall risk. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
Coming up, what officials are still working to learn about a massive explosion in Texas that damaged dozens of houses. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you, from a teenager killed after a shooting in Washington State to a dramatic police chase in Rhode Island. We're taking the pulse of America, but we start with the investigation into a home explosion in Texas.
It's pretty surreal. Like, you don't expect your house to explode. I don't want my husband to be injured, but I'm thankful that nobody else was there.
Sarah and her family were set to move into this newly built home just next month. Now her husband, Keith Simpson, is one of 6 who were hurt in the blast. She says he's burned and in surgery, but doesn't yet know what condition he's in.
I just hope my husband's okay.
Austin Travis County EMS says 2 people were injured from the initial explosion. One person's in critical condition, and the other is in serious condition, but expected to be okay.
My heart just goes out to the families.
Felix says she doesn't know what caused the explosion in her home.
The cause is currently still under investigation. We're going to leave that to the Travis County Fire Marshal. But as we said, we believe this is certainly an isolated incident.
There's no gas service connected to the house, but Austin Fire says they found propane tanks.
After those loud shots, everybody was panicking, and everybody was checking that everybody was okay, making sure there's nobody hurt.
This neighbor wanted to remain anonymous, but told us he saw 2 vehicles speeding away from the scene in opposite directions.
I don't think they were from here because it looked like they were chasing each other, maybe. and it looked like they ended up right here.
The gunfire hit a nearby water tower and grazed another building, missing several innocent bystanders in the area. But police say two 15-year-olds were hit in one of the vehicles involved. One teen died on scene. An injured 15-year-old was taken to Harborview Medical Center and is stable. Police say two others in the car were not injured, and investigators are trying to talk to them to gather more information.
It's just crazy what people will do to a 15-year-old kid.
Wake up! 35-year-old Brian Brown found slumped over the wheel of his gray SUV last Thursday. Witnesses say that same SUV drove through front yards and knocked down a light post in Tiverton's Country View Estates. It was just before 11:30 p.m. when Officer Joseph Barrick responded.
Break! Break! He's about to crash into a house.
That's when Officer Barrick took off on foot, chasing the car as it rolled across someone's front lawn.
Open the door! Sir, put your foot on the brake!
Barrick smashed Brown's window, reached inside, and threw it in park.
Step out of the car. Step out of the car.
But Brown tried to take off again.
Stop. Get out of the car.
And again. Barrick pulled the keys, then pulled him out. Residents of the area are stunned.
Anybody could have been walking their dog or just walking and been hit, but thank God it didn't happen that way.
Honoring the Navy football team. A look inside today's ceremony at the White House. We'll be right back after this. And how the current state could impact the rest of the economy. We'll have much more on that coming up tonight. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching. See you at 10.